What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the newest rumor surrounding Concord, and it's from Colin Moriarty, and it's wild. Now, I wanted to start off a little bit about Colin because you kind of have to, right? There's some serious claims in this rumor of money being spent, $400 million, as well as kind of what the game was like thought of, how high Sony thought of it. You know, we've heard before that it was Herman Hulst's baby, and he says it again. That terrifies me because this is the man like co-running PlayStation Studios. And for him to believe so much in a game that I don't know what you believed in, I don't know what you saw that made you believe so much, to hear that a second time, because we've already heard it before, that terrifies me. I think Herman Hulst seems like a good guy, and I think he's a talented guy, but Jesus, you make mistakes, but I don't know if you make those kind of mistakes when you're in those positions. So I don't know. We'll talk about that as this video goes. But, you know, Colin, he does get a lot of things right, and the one thing I want to talk about just really quickly is he really takes the angle of, like, he doesn't really care about any of this stuff, right? He was kind of kicked out of the gaming industry by his peers and all that jazz. He does stuff just to do it, just for his own, like, joy of things. So when he breaks things, he's breaking news, right? He's not doing it out of, oh, I want all of the clicks. Like, he's got his business. He's very successful at what he does. He doesn't need it. And he says it actually in the beginning of the video. It's about a 10-minute video that he posted out. He doesn't need it. He doesn't rely on it. And so when he does it, it's other people coming to him. He never reaches out to others. So that's just, you know, it's important to remember that, because while things can get maybe lost in translation, and I really think maybe that happened in terms of the money. We'll talk about the money in a second. You know, besides that, from like Colin's point of view, he has no reason to lie. He's got no reason to exaggerate. He's got no reason to do anything because that's just not his practice. So let's talk about that money, because one of the main things he says, right? So, you know, when Sony buys Firewalk, right? It happens, and they PlayStation puts in about $200 million in the last, say, 3-4 years. Now, he says that there was already $200 million that was put in, and maybe that was, you know, previous investors, or it also could have been PlayStation. Now, if any of that money was PlayStation, and you're counting the $200 million already, you're looking at a $250, $300, $350 million thing. But when you hear the term $400 million, it's highly probable that not all of that came from PlayStation, but at least half, if not maybe 60, 70+%. Now, this is something that I feel like you either believe it or you don't, or I guess there's always other ways to look at things, right? Maybe you're somewhere in the middle. I really want to be somewhere in the middle. When I first saw this, I even tweeted, you know, on X, and I said, like, I can't believe it. Where did the money go? Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, you hear it, and, like, is it believable? Well, like, Spider-Man and God of War and Horizon, these games are expensive. These games are $150, $200, $250 million, right? Like, they're expensive games. But you can see it. Like, maybe you don't see it entirely, and I get that, right? Like, you look at Spider-Man 2, and you say, okay, did that really need to cost $200, $250 million, right? And you can make a good argument for no, you know, you probably want to get that budget down. And we've talked about that. You don't want budgets that are pushing $300 million. That's way too much money. But, you know, you see the quality, and you see how long it took to make the game, and the quality of people and all that stuff. And, you know, you can kind of understand it at least a little bit. Point being, I can't understand any of it when it comes to Concord, right? Like, this isn't as big of a team as Insomniac or Santa Monica, so it's a smaller amount of people. They don't seem like the best industry veterans that the industry has to offer, clearly. And it's like, yeah, it might have taken 4 or 5 years, but, like, where did that money come from? Where are you putting, or where did it go? Actually, that's the better thing, or bigger thing to talk about. Say even the $200 million that Colin says PlayStation gave it just in the last 3 years, where is that going? Like, truly, like, you look at the game, and the game is not even deep. Like, that's the thing to me, is you can like it, and I know there are some people out there that do like it. I mean, you can't currently play the game, so you liked the game, you know, previously. That's fine. But when you look at the game, you tell me where you think that money went, because the characters, like in terms of like the artists and stuff, the character models are uninspiring at best, and that's like one of the nicer ways to put it, right? So okay, not really there. The hero shooter approach, not deep, not really there. Maps and levels, and like, again, I go back to character models. The cutscenes, they're going to do it weekly, so that seemed like a bigger deal. Where did the money go? Who's being paid so much? Like, if you look at it, a lot of times, actually most of the budget is the employees. You think 300 people, that they make at least like $100,000 each. Now, maybe some do a little bit less, but some make much more than $100,000. Multiply it by 5 years, you get tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. You do the math yourself, you can figure that out. So who's getting paid all of this money to make this product? Like, why are they being paid? That's actually the bigger thing. Why are they getting paid $150,000, $200,000 a year to make what we saw of Concord? Okay, so that's one big part of it. You guys let me know in the comments. The other thing I really want to touch upon, and I'll link the whole 10-minute video if you guys want to watch it, but the other thing that stuck out to me is, well, there was like that toxic positivity, which we've heard before too, right? Where it seemed like people inside the studio were not allowed to talk about it in any kind of negative way. They weren't allowed to point things out. And we've talked, I've said before, like, that is horrible. It actually doesn't get worse than that. I would actually rather have a toxic negative, work environment where just everything is negative, because at least you're striving to be positive. In this one, you're not actually striving to do anything. You're striving to not touch anything or not say anything, right? Now, the thing could be, because we, brought up Herman Hulst, could be because of that. When, he wasn't the CEO or, the co-CEO or whatever, he wasn't that yet, but he was rising up the ranks, right? So if he really did care about this thing as much as we're being told he cared about it, are you really going to go against him? And I can that I get, just as like an average level employee. You're working on a game. You're trying your hardest. You're maybe not very good, but you're trying your hardest. And the head dog, the top dog, loves the game. Thinks it's like perfect, thinks it's the future of freaking PlayStation, right? Are you going to call it out? Because if it rises up, if you call it out and it rises up the ranks, it might get to him eventually. And then, what's he going to do to you? So, I can understand that. And I think that's actually way more on him than it is on the team. So I would side with the team on that one. And then the future, I mentioned it. So another part that Colin talked about, and this is backed up. See, like, I didn't believe this initially as well, but the evidence actually is there, right? He talked about how Sony and PlayStation looked at it as like the future of PlayStation. And, you could just keep diving back into the well. The well was deep. It was like their Star Wars. And he specifically mentioned that. He said that they believed that this game was like their Star Wars. And just stopping there just for 2 seconds. How could you ever believe that? But okay, moving on past that. Okay, you might believe it, you might not believe it. But why I'm actually starting to believe it, well, look at the facts. The game, for the cutscenes, I mentioned the cutscenes, every week. It's supposed to be every week. So it's kind of like almost like an episode, like a television thing, right? Where it keeps on going. Another big thing to me is that secret level that Amazon show, which looks great. Looks awesome, right? So PlayStation is featured heavily. You see Kratos, and I think Astrobot, by the way, is going to be in that thing. But, you see a couple PlayStation icons. Concord is in an episode. So of all the things to pick from PlayStation, they picked Concord. Now, that's a stupid idea just in and of itself, but why would you pick Concord? Well, you pick it if you think it's got some like sprawling impact, right, where it can like reach a lot of people, and you think it maybe already reached a lot of people, so they know what Concord is. But it's like, I don't know. The whole thing is just a disaster, because we saw it coming. Like, the average Joe, even if you liked it, could see that this game was probably, at best, not going to do well. Maybe not completely fail, maybe last a month or two and then die out, but, at best, it would do moderately okay, but probably still bad. At worst, you look at the game and say, this game is dead on arrival, right? I think that's fair. No matter if you like it or hate it, there's kind of a range that we could immediately tell the second you saw the cinematic trailer. They let off with the cinematic trailer, and that was a terrible idea. So how do people not know this, right? And I mean, it makes me furious. So I guess to end this, one thing I want to say, if this truly did cost, even if it costs $200 million, plus Colin said that's not the price that PlayStation paid to acquire them. So they put in $200 million, plus they bought Firewalk, plus they were going to keep the game going, monthly, and every month it was going to cost, I think, tens of millions of dollars. Plus, they may have put in money before they bought the studio at all. So if you look at all that money, right, you're talking 200 at the minimum, but actually you're talking probably closer to 250, 350 million, right? That is so much. That's another Spider-Man. That is probably 5 to 7 smaller size games. The Astrobots of the world, you could have given us maybe even 10 of those for the price of Concord. If that's true. That would make me furious, because that is just the worst management that I've ever seen in my life. I really believe that would be the worst management I've ever seen in my life, because it's a culmination of everything. It's believing the game is so good when it's clearly not, almost just ignoring things. And he goes into it more. Like, there were signs that the game was nothing from the beginning. So it's not like I'm just saying, it's not like, oh, maybe to some people it looked bad, to some people it looked good. There was like little to nothing there, and it also never looked inspiring and never really looked good. And for some reason, people believed in it. So, that's kind of that story. How can you possibly make these decisions? This is so much money that you may have lost, and also that money could have been put anywhere else, and you probably would have made it back. You lost all of that money because Concord didn't make $1. That's the most ironic part of the entire. No matter, I don't care if it costs $20. I don't care if it costs $100 million. I don't care if it costs $50 million. I don't care if it costs $400 million. The game made zero, because anybody that bought it got it refunded. So I guess maybe if you bought it physically, but then you have to factor in, like, okay, well, what's Amazon's take? What's GameStop's take? Stuff like that. So, like, the amount of money, PlayStation probably made a couple $1,000, and I mean that. I don't even know if they made $10,000 on this game, and the game could have cost them $300 plus million. Like, oh my God. So I said on Twitter, like, if this is true, and I'm sure this is why it's being so quiet, right? Like, the head of Firewalk, or the game director, I think he quit, or he left the studio just a few days ago. Sounds like Concord is not coming back. People need to be fired for this. A lot of the heads of Firewalk need to go, and then if Herman Holst really had something to do with this majorly, you can't fire him, but he needs a talking to, because you cannot allow this to ever happen again. And whatever he saw in it, he needs to reprogram his brain to never see that again. Truly, like, those are the kind of rash decisions that you need to make because of this. I believe that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.